A very good afternoon to you and welcome to Lunchtime News, coming to you live and direct from the Newsfirst studios here in Colombo. I'm Prashant Devisagayam and let's start off with a look at this afternoon's headlines. Commercial banks located at the BIA start accepting Qatari riyals once again. Death toll following the disaster situation climbs to 213. Egypt and Saudi Arabia to close their airspace to Qatar. London police identify two of the attackers in the London terror attacks. Starting off with a developing story that is having an impact here at home and across the globe, commercial banks at the Bandaranaike International Airport have started accepting Qatari riyals once again. Now, this follows a statement from the Central Bank of Sri Lanka denying it had informed banks not to accept Qatari riyals. Now, earlier in the day, passengers arriving at the BIA had complained that banks at the airport had stopped buying Qatari riyals. A top central bank official said the central bank will discuss the Qatar riyal at a meeting later today. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain yesterday severed diplomatic relations with Qatar in a coordinated move, accusing Doha of supporting Islamist militants and Iran. The impact of this diplomatic crisis on Sri Lankan expats may be significant. Approximately 50 to 60,000 Sri Lankans each year over the past 2 years have departed Sri Lanka to work in Qatar. Qatar has provided the most number of jobs for Sri Lankan expatriates after Saudi Arabia in the last 2 years.
In the Gulf's biggest diplomatic crisis in years, Arab nations including Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt and Bahrain cut ties with Qatar, accusing it of supporting Islamist groups and destabilizing the region. The country said that they would suspend all land, air and sea traffic with Qatar, accusing it of supporting Islamist groups and destabilizing the region. The country said that they would suspend all land, air and sea traffic to and from Qatar. Qatari nationals in Bahrain, Saudi Arabia and the UAE have been given 2 weeks to leave. Egypt is closing its airspace to Qatari planes in the growing diplomatic row. Saudi Arabia and Bahrain expected to do the same later today. Travel disruption is expected as the airport in Doha, Qatar's capital, is a major hub for international flight connections. Avoiding the massive neighbor to the west, Qatari planes will inevitably have to take longer routes, leading to longer flight times. But Qatar's Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani told media that the country would, quote-unquote, still have access to the world through international sea lanes and international airspace. As most of the imports to Qatar travel via Saudi Arabia, local people and foreigners living in Qatar rushed to supermarkets on Monday afternoon out of fear for food and water shortages after Saudi announced to close land border ports. In the big shopping malls in Doha, many products ran out of stock and many shelves were emptied. Qatar at the same time stopped accepting foreign currencies including UAE dirhams and Saudi riyals except at the currency exchanges in Qatar's airports. Qatar has long been accused of funding extremist groups, but Qatar denies backing militants and its foreign minister has called for quote-unquote a dialogue of openness and honesty. After the diplomatic cut-off, Qatar's Foreign Affairs Ministry said the decision was unjustifiable and based on false claims. Oil prices spiked and then fell yesterday as energy markets were buffeted by news that Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Bahrain, Yemen and the United Arab Emirates had severed diplomatic ties with Qatar. The global benchmark Brent crude climbed as much as 1.25% in early Asian trading before slipping back to close at $49.47 US. Now, the initial In a weather advisory issued this morning, the Met Department predicts more rain in the western, Sabaragamuwa, central, northwestern and southern provinces during the course of today. The department predicts showers or thundershowers in the Uva and eastern provinces this afternoon. The department predicts showers or thunder showers in the Uva and eastern provinces this afternoon. The Met Department notes that fairly strong winds exceeding 50 km per hour can be expected over the districts of Matale, Polonnaru and Hambantota. Meanwhile, the death toll following the recent floods and landslides experienced across several districts has risen to 213. The National Building Research Organization said that 150 people sustained injuries, while another 79 people are still unaccounted for. Nearly 600,000 people were affected by the extreme weather. 2,788 houses were destroyed, with another 18,400 houses damaged. As of now, 16,870 persons are currently residing in 185 temporary shelters.
A discussion was held under the auspices of Minister Ranjit Siambalapitiya to discuss the measures to be taken to prevent a disaster situation in Waligama following the floods.
Our aim is to minimize the damages as much as possible. Our discussions today focused on medium-term and long-term plans and to prevent such disasters from taking place again. In these situations, we can identify the factors we need to prevent such disasters. In the next 5 days, we plan on identifying those factors to prevent such disasters from taking place in the Waligam area, and we will present a report on the matter to the President.
An all-night Pirit chanting ceremony to invoke blessings upon victims of the recent floods and landslides, as well as on the country and the people, was held under the auspices of President Maithripala Sirisena last night. The Pirit ceremony was held with the participation of over 1,000 members of the Mahasangha, including the Mahanayaka Theros. The Mahasangha arrived at the location in a procession which commenced from the Sri Sambuddha-loka Viharaya located in Colombo 7. Now, following the extreme weather, it was not only the lives of humans but the lives of animals too that were disrupted. A crocodile who lost his way following the floods had meandered his way into a tea estate in Akurasa and had been trampled by a tea plucker making her way through the estate. Locals who gathered at the scene had informed of the presence of the crocodile to the Akurasa police as well as the Bundala Wildlife Department. Thereafter, police, together with officials attached to the Bundala Wildlife Department, together with locals, removed the crocodile to the Bundala Forest Reserve. In more local news, a public seminar was held in Hinguragoda under the auspices of the leader of the JVP, where the current political challenges as well as the future of the country were discussed. In the beginning, they promised 1 million jobs. 2 years later, they are still talking about creating 1 million jobs. That means for 2 years, not a single job has been created. We had huge hopes and expectations in the beginning. But after 2 years, we can see that the rulers of this country have failed in fulfilling any of the promises that they made to us. Now the mindset of the people is that they have had enough. The talk is that this government needs to be toppled. But before we topple the government, we need to think about whom we will replace them with. One person was killed following a motor accident that occurred earlier this morning in Katana. The collision was between a car and a motorbike at the Kadirana junction in Katana. The pillion rider of the bike who sustained injuries has been admitted to the Nigambo hospital. The driver of the car has been arrested.